And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Thursday morning's flying weather. A couple of bands of IFR out here along the southwest interior, eastern Bristol Bay, right over Nunivak Island, and mostly marginal VFR here with a little bit of IFR out over the Bering Sea. About the same for the Aleutians, and a band of IFR here across the Gulf of Alaska, right on up along the north and eastern coast areas, down along the coast of the Panhandle with some VFR over the inside waters. Good VFR in the interior, into the Yukon, north slope to the Arctic coast, IFR. And for the afternoon, that improves quite a bit up there over the Arctic coast with VFR. Central areas all the way over to Mackenzie Bay and most of the north slope, with some marginal VFR lingering over the central north slope of the Brooks Range, eastern interior, into the central part of the state, down into northern Cook Inlet, Copper River Basin, and the southeast coast. Good VFR, marginal VFR right along the coastline here, in across southern Cook Inlet, Kenai Peninsula, Resurrection Bay, over to just south of Kenai, possibly there, Soldotna, and marginal for Kodiak Island. IFR for the Bering Strait there and along the coastal areas of the Seward Peninsula. And a little bit of IFR here, Nunivak Island there down across Cape Newenham, mostly marginal for the Bering Sea and the Aleutians. And then for the day, or for the morning hours on Friday, good VFR here for the southeast coast, interior Alaska as well, good VFR right up to the Arctic coast, maybe some marginal VFR for the eastern Brooks Range. And along the Alaska Range here, then more widespread marginal conditions down into southern Cook Inlet, Kodiak Island area, Kenai Peninsula, as well as Prince William Sound. And IFR here over the northern Bering Sea, in along the southwest coast, western Norton Sound, the western Seward Peninsula areas. VFR for the Alaska Peninsula, mostly marginal there for the Aleutians in the Bering Sea. Pribilof's marginal, and for the afternoon Friday, VFR looking pretty good here for the Aleutians, just some few areas of marginal VFR along the chain there, and pretty much VFR for the Alaska Peninsula up toward the Aleutian Range, so maybe some marginal VFR across Bristol Bay into Togiak, Dillingham, along the southwest coast, IFR along the Yukon Delta coast into Norton Sound, as well as the northern Seward Peninsula, but just coming inland, good VFR here all the way up to the Arctic coast, into the Arctic Ocean. Marginal VFR, Prince William Sound, Resurrection Bay into Kachemak Bay, Kodiak Island, and the Gulf of Alaska staying VFR though for the southeast coast. Passes, Anatuvik and Adigan, VFR tomorrow. And for the day Thursday, Lake Clark and Merrill, marginal VFR for the both passes there, especially on the eastern approach. And for rainy, VFR turning toward marginal VFR through the afternoon hours. Windy though, staying VFR. Looking good for Isabel and Mentasta. Both VFR flying expected through those two passes. And for Tanita, VFR. VFR for Portage and Chilkoot and White, VFR. For the freezing levels here, 4,000 feet over the southeast interior into the Yukon, northern Panhandle there, 2,000 feet all the way up into the Chukchi Sea, and then down around Kodiak Island. Otherwise, a little under 2,000 feet for the Bering Sea and the Aleutians. And from there, icing with the moisture, with the washing out front here, we've got a pretty good area of possible isolated moderate rime icing, Kodiak Island, southern Cook Inlet, right on up through the Bering Strait there along the western Arctic coast. And then with the main low center, some areas of possible icing here over the southern Bering Sea and for the central eastern Aleutians, as well as the Alaska Peninsula, and icing free everywhere else. Moving on to the jet stream, we've got some northwest winds, or north to northwesterlies, 95 to 120 knots out over the western Bering Sea and the western Aleutians with that main low center here, west-southwest of the Pribilofs. And the main flow with that low, stronger winds will stay south of the Alaska Peninsula. Light southeast winds over the western part of the state, and light and variable under high pressure here from the central interior, actually the northwest Arctic coast, all the way down across the Gulf of Alaska and the Panhandle. So coming down to 9,000 feet, about the same pattern here, upper level high pressure, keeping winds light and variable there for the southeast coast up to the Arctic coast. And then with the low here in the Bering Sea and the higher pressure off to the east, southeast winds maybe 25 to 30 knots over the southwest interior up to St. Lawrence Island, 30 knots out of the south or southwest for the Alaska Peninsula. Stronger winds out here to the west, out of the northwest at 45 knots. And for 3,000 feet, pretty light winds here over Alaska. We've got a narrow band of 35 knot winds right across, from the Barren Islands here up into Kachemak Bay, Iliamna Lake area. Southeast 40 knots there for the Arctic coast, or east-southeast 40 knots. Westerlies 40 to 45 knots here over the Aleutians associated with that low there to the north. And pretty light and variable for the southeast coast and the Gulf of Alaska as well. And with this narrow band of 35 knot winds, we'll throw some turbulence in with that. Again, for the Barren Islands there, right up across the southern Alaska Range into the southern Kuskokwim Valley. And also possible turbulence, light to isolated moderate turbulence there for the Arctic coast, mostly from the surface 4,000 feet. And moderate turbulence in areas there for the Aleutians.